Good evening, it's Joyful Christian Mystic Hermit. Well, this is a feast day, the 27th. It's probably the 28th, wherever you guys are, but I still have a few minutes left of the 27th of March. And this was the birthday of a very good friend of mine when I was growing up, especially third and fourth grade, fifth grade even. Well, by fifth grade, had different teachers in different classes. And then back in eighth grade, though, we were both office girls for the principal together. So that was fun again. And a little bit in high school. They had moved to a different location in our town, and she'd met other girls in that neighborhood that became very close friends with them. And I was not far away where my parents had moved when I was in high school, but I was in band and in different things, so we were always friends, but not, I would see her every now and then, but not, she was very close with this other girl who lived just maybe 4 houses or 5 houses away. So that was fine. I've always been very A-okay with stuff, Like this longtime friend, the friend that I did make in band, sat beside me. She was second chair, I was first chair clarinet. And we remained best of friends all through until I really did something awful, upset her. And so we got back together after I nearly died. I'd called her to tell her. And then somehow she wanted to know about my site. And I don't know, she doesn't communicate anymore. So maybe something about my videos. And I wasn't going to give it to her because I have this thing, if you're really interested in this type of stuff, you'll find it. If that's what you're led to, you'll already find it. I don't give it out to people. But for her, I did because I had hurt her so much before with something that she took great offense over. And I don't blame her, but I mean, I've mentioned it before, I'm a writer and I don't use, but I guess that was not my intention, was to hurt anyone either. That was to disseminate information on something, on a situation that can happen in relationships. But somebody else had seen it and told her she thought it was about her. And it had been a lot of the basis, but I didn't make it. I was more writing as if a fiction writer would write, to disseminate information, or like a psychologist, analyst would write and use an example. So conceivably, somebody they know out there, they could read themselves into it very well. But it really upset her, so she broke off. And I mean, it was all right. I felt terrible. I apologized and everything, but it wounded her. And I guess I'm just so used to seeing myself. I mean, like when I'm negative and critical of anything, I'm like 10 times worse on myself, which you may think, well, that's not good, but it's part of what I figure my examination of conscience. And I did say something that wasn't exactly truth about, I've not been abused or anything by clergy abuse, but yes, I have. So I can relate. There's these 3 women who started this order. It's of the something of the faithful to start with. It's at the beginning phases. Hopefully, it will become an official community, religious order by Rome or something. That whatever people like, I'm fine with what people want to do, or like they're trying to do something to bring change. And Catholics' mindsets generally run, well, let's start a religious community or a religious order. And I didn't grow up with that, so, I'm like, oh, well, just get a lot of people online to pray rather than having to, go live together to do something about it. But they had been in a convent before, the three of them. So, see, that would be natural for them. I understand. So, I think it's wonderful. It's called the Sisters of the Little Way of Truth, Beauty, and Goodness. And their charism is to pray for the church clergy abuse in the church, pray that it goes away, stops, and for the victims of the abuse. So I'm grateful for prayers, but I think with my exorcism, I feel so much better. I think those things are gone. I'm turning the corner. I think God brought all this out of me so that I could move ahead. He's preparing me for eternity now, big time. He had me live. Last June, I could have died. They worked on me 14 or 15 hours to keep me alive. After they made an error twice, not realizing they didn't do blood tests, they just assumed that I was loaded with narcotics, which I was not. And that was why I had low blood pressure and was non-responsive. Except I came to when they started to Narcan me, because that's the most horrible experience I have had in my life. It felt like I was being killed alive. It was doing bad things to my body. And I begged them, stop, no. And I'm legit, all this, call my pain doctor. I'm here, gut attack. And then I went unconscious again. Well, I was, thankfully, because you have terrible seizures. And that's why my upper back is so terrible now. Twice they did it to me. And the guy even sort of laughed when the second time I came to. And I said, no, don't. You're killing me. And he says, well, you're talking now, so I'm going to do it again. I'm going to keep doing it. I guess they put something in you. And, it was just so I went unconscious again. But I had seizures again. So I would if you always do. I've been told this now. And they're terrible seizures. Your body's just going all over. They didn't bother to check. Was I fused? Was my neck bad? By God's grace, my neck didn't just totally go, because each foraminal, each little hole is jammed, pinching on my nerves. That's why I have such worse headache, and it grinds, and it's needs surgery. 3 years ago, May, it needed this coming May, and it's too serious of a surgery. It's too life or death. Not going to do it until I have major nerve problem with my head, my heart, my lungs. So that's why you can't do the thoracic, because it'll make the neck go. And have the thoracic fused. Then just walking, my neck would start getting worse. So because of the compaction. So see, that kind of stuff. But honestly, I've been able to forgive. Even this exorcism helped that I know the man, they just have a mindset they can't help themselves. They are so indoctrinated against opioids, medicines, and don't understand some people genuinely need them. And I was one such person. But no, I had thrown up my little low-dose 12-hour extended release pill from my gut attack. I'd thrown it up early, like 6 hours before, 5 hours before. And and I hadn't had any for then, well, it's 18 hours since I'd had a low-dose pain med. And so, now I'm on like so much more. I can't even begin to compare. I would have to look it up. I don't want to look it up. Why upset myself? But you have to forgive, and I also want to forgive those who feel a need to counter what I talk about because they don't know. They only see one view, their perspective. And I understand that perspective, but I'm here in truth and justice. And it's an irony because these women who have started, they've been sisters before, who have started the little way of truth, beauty, and goodness, the sisters of the little way, their whole charism is on trying to help stop the abuse. Two of those sisters had been abused. So they're praying for me. Their prayers are going to help me heal. I said I wasn't a victim of abuse because I say I abuse people, and you get over it. My spiritual father even said, don't ever talk about it. Because he says they'll just turn it on you. They'll turn it on you and you'll be blamed. And he says you were a victim in all the situations. And there were varying kinds of abuse with me. So, and I'd been abused otherwise, sexually, out in the world, by when I was vulnerable, and by someone in authority. Well, two, actually. The one slipped me something in a drink that drugged me, didn't date rape me, study raped me. We were studying for our exams because the USC required that you had to have a study partner. I didn't want one. It was just extra effort for me to drive someplace with my terrible back then. It was before the surgery, but that did it to me, totaled my back in 1987. It was just the Christmas before, but I had my doctoral exams, thankfully, before my back totally gave out. So passed those, and then all I had left was the dissertation, which took me several years to do because of I couldn't sit, and had a lot to get used to. Talk about a transition, but I handled that better than this transition. But I think I'm getting a grip on this transition. This transition is facing major life change that I am barely functional. But maybe I can build up. I'm feeling more hope. I managed to get the backyard mowed. And my two little buddies stood at the window, had their little heads out the window, watching me go back and forth, cheering me on. You can do it. You can do it. I know they were. They weren't speaking, but they just watch me from the window when I mow. So it was encouraging. It was like, hey, they care, Could they be my health care representative and my power of attorney and executor? Wouldn't that be? I know that they care. And they've been extra good. They know I'm not feeling well. And they're so sweet. God's little creatures. They're very sensitive. Very sensitive. And true and just. Little animals are very true and holy, kind of innocent creatures. So today is this the 27th of this friend of mine that all through, and she passed away. She had cancer. Her dad had cancer at the same age that my friend Pam died. Her dad died when we were he died summer between our 8th grade and freshman year. And it was really hard. So, but when I was older and I didn't know Pam was sick, I hadn't seen her for a long time, several years. I'd had my surgery. I had my children, and I was actually seeing Dr. H to help me deal with, is there any job I could have? How am I going to handle all this pain and all that? I'd lost my career. So, but I had a dream one night. And in it, Pam, it's in my journal because, and I think I even maybe did a poem of it, but Pam stood by my bed. I was like in a hospital bed. Had I had my surgery? Yes, I had. But I was like in a hospital bed. Pam stood beside me, but she was dressed in white like an angel, and she had angel wings. And she had a rose, a white rose, and she dropped a petal, one after another, and let it float down on me. I was laying on this bed. That dream for me was God was forewarning me that I was going to be in bed a lot. That my back, I wasn't going to be having a viable life at first. Well, I talked it over with Dr. H. What does this mean? Am I going to die soon? But I said, well, Pam isn't deceased. She's not in heaven. She's not an angel. And, but Pam kept dropping one petal after another and kept repeating, that things about peace and life is one petal after another. Just let it float, let it fall, and have peace. And this is today's Pam's birthday on Earth, her Earth birthday. And I think that she's giving me a message by reminding me of her coming to me way back. I didn't know she even had cancer yet. I don't know if she even knew. But she came to me in this dream and was as an angel and had this white rose and was talking these words of wisdom to me. And then it was maybe 2 or 3 years later, at least 2 years later, my mom said, oh, Pam has cancer, and it's, it started breast cancer, and they thought they could get it in remission. She'd had chemo. She had a little boy and a little girl. And the son has since passed away, not of cancer. He became a therapist. His mother died when she was 41, same age as when her dad died. And it was just a year after, not even quite a full year after I'd had brought the children back to the Midwest. And I talked with her sister on the phone just to help her, because I told her sister and I had talked one time. The sister was the age of my elder sister, but Pam's sister and I always connected. And so she called me and talked over, and she was there with her sister, and I shared with her about my death experience and sort of what to expect when it was going to get close with Pam, and not to be startled by a light or anything like that. If she saw Pam, looking out to a light or reaching for it, or that it's okay, it was Christ coming, or her dad or something. Both of the girls' dad. The mother was still alive. But, so we had a good conversation, and then Pam passed away not long after. And her sister called me back and said, yes, she opened her eyes wide and reached out her arms and said something about, what's that light coming in through the door, So she was met by an angel or her dad or something. Jesus probably came for Pam. But it was, I've been able to help people, but it always seems to be people who are about ready to die that I can help them, not fear. But with this case, it was her sister. it was too late. I couldn't talk with Pam. She was too ill. But I did see her about a year before she passed. I'd had a gathering when we'd gotten back to the Midwest, and my children were visiting their dad for a couple of weeks, and then I had some of the high school girls over, and Pam, of course, was one of my friends. So saw her again, and I could tell she was very, very ill. And she didn't stay that long, but it was awkward for her a little too. I could tell she was already moved on. I wanted to talk privately with her, but there were about 10 of us gals there. We were all 40 years old, people from my class in high school. And we had a girls' overnight. It was fun. So, that was 5 years prior to my becoming Catholic. Pam's father was Catholic. And he went to stay with his mother and a sister in a different town when he got fairly ill, where he needed to be in a hospital bed and things. And a lot of it was his wife, who wasn't Catholic and never wanted anything to do with it, did not want the Catholic influence, because he was going to have the last rites, and he wanted that. So he left, and he didn't, but I think he didn't want his children to, they felt, not to have the children see him suffer and die. But I think that would be hard on children. Now I think most people would be more open about it. Back then, there weren't so many people dying of cancer, or they didn't know, until the last minute that it was cancer. There weren't as many tests and diagnostics, and so it was very sad. I thought that was very sad that he had to be elsewhere to have his faith. And as I looked back on it later, and then when I became Catholic, I understood, of course, he would want to have the Eucharist before he died. And but he didn't practice when he was with his family, with his girls, 2 girls and his wife. But I thought, in a way, what a lovely man to sacrifice for his wife like that, to sacrifice that aspect of his life, his religion, have to live it internally. He did. And he was a very lovely man. And Pam really favored him a lot, I thought. Height and everything, and her demeanor, very, very peaceful, very more quiet, common sense, mature, sort of I was more out there, spontaneous, creative, not so quiet. Yeah, but we were such good friends when we were little. So I'm thinking of her today and thanking her for what a beautiful person she is, and how hard it was for her to leave her little boy and her little girl. But her son's hopefully with her now, and the daughter's married and has some children, and so her husband eventually remarried. It's very hard on him. What a lovely couple they were. So she was a speech pathologist by her education and career. So we just never know, but God prepared her, and people have to detach. So and her mother really favored, or something, was very close with Pam. And that was hard on her older sister a bit. But her mother had a very good friend. They were very close. They were neighbors for part of their growing up. And this other friend, this woman, had 2 boys. And Linda was able to be close to that woman. So it all worked out. I mean, I'm talking close in sort of a different way of a, when someone favors one of the two. I mean, I notice. Of course, I didn't realize I'm sensitive. I pick up on stuff. And I picked up on that. And I picked up on the fact that the neighbor woman and her husband, they made up to Linda. She became more of the mother close. When Linda would come back to visit in the hometown, she would go see her other mother and stay there, even very close. So, and close with her sons, and they were like brothers to her. So, and Pam too loved her, but Pam's mother really, and this was growing up even, very protective, more so. Not Pam's fault. I mean, it's just these things happen. Nobody means anything by it, and maybe for some reason that was necessary or needed in some way. So just, well, here's an example. I went over one evening. I was invited over to play, and Pam had the other friends there. And I knew those girls too. I just wasn't as close, and I didn't need all that. But I enjoyed going over, and it was nice to be included and all. But I immediately noticed something with the mother was not right. Something wasn't right. And I saw the older sister, who I got along with well, and I said, "What's going on?" I even said it loudly, "Hey, what's going on here? What's going on here?" I knew something was going on that was different. It's like, what is this? And it seemed very important, but I didn't know how. And so the older sister says, "Come around here, come around here, come with me, shh, come with me." And she says, "My mom doesn't want Pam to know." And she says, "But my dad has cancer, and he's not expected to live. It's in his bones." And I said, "Well, I could tell something was very upsetting your mother." And she says, "Yeah, that's why she wanted Pam to have you come over and other friends." Well, the other friends were in the neighborhood. She wanted you to come over and be here. And that was like, well, wow, it made me feel responsible. I was okay with that. I knew, and then I got home, because we hadn't moved yet to live closer. I got home, because they had already moved to their newer home, and told my mom. And so she got my sister, who was Linda's age, and I don't think my eldest sister was around. She was in college. And we all talked, what can we do? How can we help support this family? I was concerned for Linda. She started to cry, and she was strong and tough. Her mother leaned on her in that role of being responsible and being strong. And she was very outgoing, Linda was. In fact, she ended up going to the Air Force. She always knew what she wanted to do. She went to the Air Force Academy out in Colorado. This was back in 1966. She was like one of the few women to go to get in. And she was career. I think she ended up captain or colonel or something, way up, and was career Air Force. And just a great human being, and has had lots of suffering. Her son was one of the first ones killed in the Iraqi war. He had just gotten out of West Point. And her daughter, his brother, he had just gotten married. And he was called over and he got killed, like I think the second day he was there. A grenade blew up his tank. And Linda and her husband, they bore that. She had a stepson with her husband. Her husband had a son from a first marriage. I think his wife had died. And then Linda and he had a daughter and then a son. And her daughter maybe was the youngest, whatever, but she went to West Point too, went through West Point. And, but what a tragedy. And Linda just has had so much she's had to handle. Then her sister got sick. Her dad had died, and she was the one that was to handle it, Handle everything, sort of keep track of all the girls that myself and then the neighbor girls that had come. Wanted Pam to be occupied so the mother could cry. And the friend was there. I knew something was going on immediately. I hadn't done it. All the other kids, they knew nothing. But that was the first thing I noticed. Something's right. What's going on here? What's going on? There's something's not right. And there's Linda, having to handle all that, plus try to keep Pam from finding out anything or not, keeping her occupied. And that was the plan, to invite people over and, invite me, even though I wasn't really part of that group, and hadn't been, but that made me feel in a way like God put me there. That Mrs. Betty was her name, that she knew that I should be someone there. People always knew that I was religious, or, and counted on me for that kind of stuff, I guess, in situations like that. So that's why I was invited over. And Linda said, Pam isn't to know, just try to act normal. I said, I can do, I'll do that. But I then realized, I'm going to have to figure out how I can be supportive from here on. But he soon after then left and died a few months later, maybe just 3 or 4 months later, at his mother's in a city that was maybe 45 minutes away. It was different, that I would have wanted to be right there with my dad. In fact, that was the first travel I made with my back, was, and my dear sister and her husband, the next older sister, she wanted me out there. My eldest sister didn't go, but my other sister and her husband will buy your ticket. We'll meet you, because I flew then to where they lived, and we'll get on the same plane to be with you in case you need anything, because of my pain situation and sitting. But I made it, and made it through, and they were too upset to stay the night with them. Then last night somebody needed to stay, and I was there and was able to pray and saw the gold lights going like back and forth above his head, against the head. All these gold sparkling lights started in around 1 a.m, and they went on for a good 5 to 7 minutes. And I knew it was his day. The angels had come and were with him. I was there in the room. He was in agony because he needed it. His cancer just went so fast. They didn't even know he had cancer until like 2 days before, and they needed to get him on hospice so that they could inject him with something for pain. and they had to wait till the hospice could get the order. It didn't come through until like 2:30 in the morning or 3 in the morning. And by then, even when they just had to move him slightly to give him an injection, he was in terrible agony and screamed in pain. It just was awful for to see my dad suffering like that. But see, things like that, God has a purpose for us. He has a purpose for us, for what we are to be doing for others. And, but truth is so important. And I want to share this about this hermit. And I have something else more on the truth end of it, but maybe I will share it or maybe not, because sometimes you think, what's the point? But I probably will share it in a different video. Maybe. We'll see. I don't want to fuss about it. It's not going to make any difference. It's just this other person is putting out something that isn't accurate. If you're going to be a writer or a speaker online, you really need to research, and not try to make things just your way. It's not really ethical, journalistically, to try to just come up with your own thing, but or at least not to then refute someone else who has research and has reality, or at least the full picture of someone who. But then when I look at the whole thing, who cares? Has to do with hermits. And the diocese hermits, and how they came to be. Another little how they became to be a little bit more of that. It's not going to change anything, but there's a lot of irony involved. But I'm just going to share about John of Egypt instead. Historical figure, an authentic hermit from the 4th century. He was born around 305, died around 394. John of Egypt, St. John the Hermit, John the Anchorite, or John of Lycopolis. He was one of the hermits and grazers of the Nitrian Desert. The grazer hermits. I remember, I don't know if some of you don't remember, I did a study, some videos on the grazer hermits. They would graze. They would eat vegetables and fruits and grasses. They did not eat meat or breads, a little bit different. And they would go out seeking their food from the forest, from the oasis, from the date palms. They would just eat from the land what they could find, but no animals and no breads. He began as a carpenter, and they were a little more extreme type of hermit, a grazer, grazing. Humans grazing as animals, and some of them would even get down on all fours out of a sense of humility and of baseness, of being like animals foraging for their food. So it's sort of interesting. But John began as a carpenter. At the age of 25, he began to live a life of solitude. In his early life, he was born in Lycopolis. His parents were poor, and as it said, he trained as a carpenter. But at 25, he became a monk under the guidance of an elderly hermit. Now, here by the word monk, he became a disciple of a elderly hermit. He wasn't in a monastery. At least not at first. And I don't think he ever did. No, he didn't. He spent a decade with the hermit, this elderly hermit, and took direction from him, learning from him how to be a hermit, how to pray, how to humble oneself, how to be obedient to God and to others, how to live austerely, how to focus on God, how to learn pure love, I'm sure. John Cassian, we've heard of him. I've talked about him before, and I'd like to go through his books more. I get them unpacked. John Cassian recounts a tale that the hermit who directed John would direct him to water a dry stick every day for a year. He gave him a dry stick. He said, put this in the ground and water it every day. He wanted to suggest that it was going to grow into a tree, to keep watering it. And John of Egypt did. At his first year, taking direction from this elderly hermit, he watered that stick in the ground every day for a year. After that test, it was a test of obedience. John figured it out, obviously. He just kept watering it. He was asked to do that, and he did it. So after that test of obedience, the superior threw the stick away. When the hermit died, the elderly hermit who he was learning from, John spent the next 5 years traveling and visiting monasteries. So he became more nomadic. He avoided seeing women, in particular, to avoid temptation. But he avoided all people for the last 50 years of his life. St. Augustine wrote that John was tempted by devils and performed miraculous cures. He cured a woman, according to Augustine, of blindness, and then appeared to her in a vision to avoid seeing her in person. So he would pray and maybe visualize the person, but heard this woman is blind, and can you heal her? And John the hermit healed her without being there in person. And he appeared to her later then in a vision. So, and could do that, could bilocate in essence. So I thought that was sort of interesting, that he was very disciplined like that. He was not going to risk temptation with a woman, even if it was to go to heal her, even if he was elderly. According to Butler, John prayed incessantly. We've talked about that before. How you pray incessantly. You're not necessarily praying verbal prayers or mental prayers at all. You're into contemplative prayer by then. And it's always, everything becomes a prayer. Everything. Like my talking right now, this video is a prayer. My mowing the yard became a prayer. The thoughts are with God. You take God with you everywhere. Well, of course we do. Anyway, God is in our soul. The Trinity dwells within us. But we aren't aware of that most of the time. People don't realize it in an actual way. Once you break through that and you realize, and you're quieted, not to a point of abject stillness where you empty your mind or anything. My pain's too much. There's always pain there. So I don't really want to empty it totally. No, I think of God. If I'm going to think of something, that's the best thing to do to prepare to pray. Think of God, Jesus, Holy Spirit. Or something Jesus said, or, that's the Holy Spirit in us, the Trinity within, very aware of what Christ said when he was on earth, and listen for Christ to speak to you personally yourself. He's still alive, very much alive, and in you, and he will start speaking. God the Father can speak. You have an angel who can speak, and the Holy Spirit speaks. In fact, the Holy Spirit often will speak what God wants spoken to you. Or if there's any command or something, he'll have an angel speak that often enough, unless it's something he wants to say or Jesus wants to say directly. Like when God wanted me to stop worrying and thinking I should be a diocese hermit. I kept thinking, well, I want to be able to identify as Catholic. And if that's the only way, I think that was that time, as the lady made that up, that you can't call yourself a Catholic if you're not a diocese hermit. Can't refer to yourself, if you're a hermit, as a Catholic hermit, which is nonsense. But she has all this, writing that she does. She just writes and writes and writes, to try to justify things, and makes it sound very logical, and people believe it. People who want that added pride that, oh, I'm so special. I'm a diocese hermit, so I can have titles. I can be recognized. And that's some of what I will talk about in a separate video. But see, those kinds of things, John the Hermit, the authentic desert hermits, the original hermits, John the Baptist, oh, they wouldn't have ever cared about anything like that. Humility, 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 hiddenness, not necessarily physical hiddenness, but just not of no account, not anything special, no recognition, didn't need to have a special position or a law made for them so that they could be on equal par with others in the religious life, others that were recognized and wore habits and things. They didn't want any of that. That's not getting you any closer to God. In fact, it sort of distracts and takes you a little away. It gets you closer to the temporal, to the tangibles, to the ego, the id, and not closer to dying to self. You take on more self. So that's why I just really respect this hermit, John the Hermit, and how he was so careful around women even. He wasn't going to abuse anyone, and he didn't want to be accused of it. He didn't even want to have any temptation to any kind of a feeling of warmth toward, why? He was celibate. His life was in God. He didn't want to risk that total alliance to God, to the spiritual. And being a male, he was quite aware of the temptations and also of the wiles of women. Women can be very tricky. And I've noticed with priests or people who are off limits, that oftentimes they'll try even harder to flirt or to feel special to priests. It's like a big get for them, a conquering. And even if they don't set out to outright seduce. So talk about clergy abuse. There's also abuse of clergy. Like I mentioned, the parishioners abuse them in a way, in their own way, by warping them, appealing, breaking down their resilience and getting to their egos and getting to their feelings. And, oh, you poor thing, you need to have some fun, or, oh, it doesn't hurt to have a hug, so it can work both ways. So I hope that the Sisters of the Little Way will pray about that aspect too, of abuse of clergy by parishioners, that whole mindset of, they don't do it intentionally, but it ends up that way, of anointing them as like kings or God. And then they start, it breaks down their humility, starts to get them prideful or more autocratic in leadership style, more king-like, which are autocrat leadership style. And it's not a healthy style to lead with. It's a top-down. I'm in charge and I'm great and I say what is and no one else does. It's not anything that you can do about it. It gets into that mode. And then people are afraid. Autocrats do not take correction. I'm the priest, not you, when you weren't even thinking you were a priest, So, things like that can start build up in their minds. And, but it starts because we do that to them. Or other people have over time. And then you might meet them and they're already pretty kingly and not open for suggestions or ideas, or if they are doing something that isn't right, not open for spiritual correction whatsoever. And the bishops are in a position, many of them, depends on which bishop or their mindset, what they've been created as by people around them. They're not in a vacuum, none of us are. So how people treat us affects us. I'm blessed that God is keeping me very much his, abandoned. I get to experience that. It's a wonderful thing to experience because Christ experienced that, So my own family is, my immediate, is burned out. And I can't blame them at all. But so if I didn't have that though, I could become really obnoxious with pain and expect special treatment, Oh, poor me, cater to me. And see, God's not allowing that. He says, no, you're going to have to buck up and get some gumption. So it's what my mother used to say. And it's sort of I'm hearing it, and I've got to. So he was very careful, John was. And according to Butler, he prayed incessantly. See, he had God in his heart, in his soul, in his mind, in himself, in his body. He knew it, and he lived it. He lived God with him always. There's like Brother Lawrence's book. He was a simple monk. He worked in the kitchen, and he had great sayings, and that's a fun book to read. Practicing the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. He was maybe in the 18 or 1600s or something, 1500, who knows, back a ways. A very quaint book, but so true, truisms about living that modest, humble life, practicing the presence of God wherever he was, whatever he was doing in the monastery. Just manual labor and the grunt work, washing the pans. They gave him the chores, the icky stuff to do. And he didn't mind, he never complained about that. And that, see, I can see that I can get into that kind of mode more. But the suffering, I haven't conquered that to not complain. I haven't got to that point at all. So, sometimes I do better, but this last week or two has been rugged. So I've done a lot of complaining. But Brother Lawrence but I still practice the presence of God. And I thought today, I learned so much about pure love from these dogs. Just their, see, God's love is always watchful. He's always there for us. He's here for us. And that's something that these dogs are, they're just right with me. They're very protective. God protects us. He loves us. And so I get that, and that's how I need to be to others. But if I've burned others out, I can't. See, I have to play my cards right. I have to be very careful not to reach in when someone is burned out. But I'm working up to a little like, if there's a medal this weekend, if I find out, I'll congratulate. I'll send a text or something. But he also spent his last 3 days of his life without food or drink or any interactions but prayer. Well, now a lot of people when they die stop eating and drinking. But see, Butler, he writes about different, and this was according to Butler, hagiographer, write about saints, and he's from older times, so he would add all these embellishments. But we all know that not eating or drinking anything for the last 3 days of life is not a like, oh wow, oh that's a saint. That's the body shutting down. You lose your appetite. You don't drink. You're whole. In fact, my cousin just reminded me of this regarding my aunt, the hospice nurse. She says, well, I already knew this. She says, I already knew this. I didn't so much, not in these terms anyway. I was interested in hearing it. But my aunt is barely eating anything, doesn't want it, or drinking much. The hospice nurse says that the brain starts focusing all on just trying to survive. So it's signaling to my aunt's brain, no interest in drinking or eating. All of the focus is on subconsciously the body staying alive, fighting for life. And although it is shutting down, starting to, it's gradual. And the older you are, the longer it can take, because she's lived so long, so thin and emaciated and hardly eating, that her body has adapted to that. So, but anyway, I just wanted to point that out. When you read things about saints, sometimes you have to sort of take some stuff with a grain of salt, because it's, they're trying to build up like, oh, that's really a mark of sainthood, But no, he was just dying. But he didn't want any interactions but prayer. That, I think, is lovely. With other people who might want to come, ask them to pray, or talk about God or heaven, or what you're looking forward to, or reassuring people. If you have family members who fear the death process, explain it to them. Keep up with some death experiences from other people online, or me. I have mine. And reassure family, especially if you have children who are young or grandchildren. But he just wanted to pray. But see, that's what he did anyway. He already was in that contemplative prayer mode where all had become a prayer. Everything he did, everything he thought, every encounter he had was prayer. He was discovered in his cell with his body in a position of prayer. Now that's distinctive. This very holy Methodist woman I knew, she was a missionary, and also Church of the Brethren. I think she had been in that growing up, but I think her missionary work was through the Methodist Church. I'm not sure. Didn't matter really. Christian. And she was in China before the wars, way back before around World War I or something, or right after. And then she was in the Philippines. In fact, she was in the Philippine Death March, nearly died, but she survived, made it the 50 miles or so of, they thought they would kill people by marching them, let them die off along the way. But she made it. But she was found dead in her little home out by the college area, my hometown, a little tiny place, her head down on her Bible, sitting at her kitchen table. The Bible was open to where she'd been reading, and her head had just gone down on it when she died. And she was I could tell by her eyes. Her eyes sparkled. And even as a very elderly woman, she, and her smile, and her eyes were a smile too. They were filled with the holiness and joy of God, joy of Christ. So that was, anyway, his feast day is March 27th in the Western churches, and in Eastern Orthodoxy, June 12th. So I thought that was interesting about him. So I'm going to stop. I get off into all these other details of stuff. I guess that's okay. That's what comes to me, and it's my life journal. But I do want to, because I have mentioned before about this bishop who some monks I thought they were female hermits, but I guess they're male hermits, went to they wanted to be recognized by the church, wanted the status of that, and a law made for them, and they got this bishop to do it for them. And he was known as a dissenter and a troublemaker. But people of another persuasion thought he was the greatest thing to happen to the church. Not many, but a certain segment. People in Canada, but I have information that I have facts, so I'll share that in a separate video. Because if these, it gives credence all the more to the the sisters of the little way of truth, beauty, and goodness, of what that man condoned and encouraged. This bishop who these people went to, that was not good. He did not, anyway, and other things. He was not this great, wonderful leader. He was a dissenter and a troublemaker, and did his own thing. But see, that's what a lot of the diocese hermit stuff is. They sort of do their own thing. It says, in fact, this bishop who got them his big thing was that the bishop would supervise the hermit. But no, this one who writes all the time about her diocese hermit, she's never had a bishop supervisor. She's got a woman friend who was a sister at a dwindling community that is not what you would call an orthodox one. So see, people do their own thing. And if you're a hermit of the authentic, traditional, historic, original type, it's always a challenge, but you don't want. I would love for my bishop to guide me. I always had a spiritual director. Father Vincent can troubleshoot, but he's not right here. But God wants me. He says, why would you want that when you can have me directly? So I'm very blessed, very blessed. But I will share truth, because I've been the one who have said about this bishop, and it's being refuted, of course. So I want truth out there as a warning. Mainly, if you're going to be online, research and get truth. And then don't bash what someone else does or refute when then you're not giving the full story, not giving the truth. They got him because they knew he was a dissenter and a troublemaker and could get this through because they wanted to be noticed, recognized, have status, have legal status, and be on equal par with religious orders and have the favors that the religious orders had and the notice and the esteem. Be recognized by the church. And I see what I go through in abjection and persecution or God alone, but not individual. I'm not an individualistic. Actually, I think some of the diocese hermits are more individualistic if they don't want to have a priest or a bishop supervise them. They're more dissenting themselves. Don't recognize the priesthood as wanting a priest or a male to tell them or to direct them. They're not as free that way. See, I don't mind following orders. And I did that for years. Did what my spiritual director told me. If anything came up, and mainly with it, he had to keep me from being too austere for my own health, and remind me, no, you've got plenty of suffering. Don't take anything on. God is giving you plenty. Just what you need, he'll give you. And he does. Even this last couple of weeks of this extra, it's time to get more and more serious about the spiritual life and knock off my flaws. This is still Lent. It's been one of the hardest Lents just because of the reality of how debilitated I am. Suddenly, it just seems like suddenly, but I guess it is. It just got to the point I couldn't take the pain anymore. It just got so bad, so much worse. But arachnoiditis progresses. So, that's part of it. And to have to adjust to that, to how much worse. But I'm blessed that I can still get up. And I'm blessed that I've got a pain doctor. Like the gal yesterday when I told her, I said, it's just been so much in the last month of, even that, the kidney PA just hollering. Oh, he was so, and he's never called back regarding the test results. He didn't like me once he found out I was on pain med. And it was back when I was on the low stuff. But it's a killer. They're killers, and, oh, your kidneys, what chance do you have, Well, what am I supposed to do about that? I can't help it. He doesn't have a clue. And he says, well, I've heard of it, but you're the first person I've met. And I suppose since I wasn't, I don't know, like screaming in agony and writhing on the floor or something, but I still have horrible pain, and I had to take my meds, but nothing like this. I made it there. I was in much better shape. That was 4 weeks ago or more. So, just to see how fast this is, it's like, is it going to slow up or is it going to keep going fast? And am I being wrong not to trade and just stay in bed and get rid of the dogs, or, have to have 3 patches instead of 2 just to be able to walk to the bathroom on that tile and cement, whatever. But no, stay put. Have had signs for that. Stay put. and don't give in. Don't give in until God lets me know it's time to give in. Now it's fight. It's build back up. Build up. The gardens need me. My dogs need me. Build up. I'll know. He'll let me know when he wants me to just stop. But anyway, so I think it'll be interesting what I have to say. And maybe these sisters can utilize that information also. It's just more validation of how even other bishops and priests will, or bishops or something, will enable other bishops or priests who are acting out. They stick together, some of them do. So that's even that kind of abuse going on. And there's this one group that they've had it with abuse, sexual abuse by clergy, and they think bishops have no business going to the funerals of priests who have been abusive and never made amends for it, or never paid penance, did reparation, because they say it's like they're condoning that person's behavior. Others say, well, no, they're honoring the person's soul or praying, I don't know what to think on that, but I can certainly see the view of the people who have been horribly sexually abused and nothing happened to the priest to do it, like abusing children and things. And then the other priests and bishops go to their funeral mass, or even celebrate the funeral mass at a cathedral for one of these clergy who did terrible things. But I think, when this is in Canada, it was, but I don't know if they do that here. I would think not. I would hope not. But if it was a friend of theirs, and see, it's a hard thing, because what would Jesus do? I mean, I don't know. I think that someone like that, if they were repentant, would want just a quiet graveside, or a private mass, just a private mass, if their family wanted to come, any existing relatives, if their parents were still alive or not, or siblings or nieces and nephews, just private, for someone who's done heinous things and wasn't in prison for it, or was in prison even, and then, but usually they're laicized now, so, but sometimes not. Well, I know, I've talked of some that aren't. They were still in the pulpit all through, but they hadn't raped, that I know of, not my son anyway, but certainly harassed him terribly. And somebody did mention, definitely if he had emotional after effects of it. Well, yes, he did. He's not a Catholic, and he turned against God in addition. And whenever anything Catholic came up, 3 years ago even, he hasn't spoken to me for over 3 years, he would just go into a rant, a rage, and just say, all Catholic priests do is rape and molest little boys. It's all they do. They all do it. Just extreme, just ranting about it. And I would say, no, not all, a small percent. But I said, even one is too many. And I said, what happened with you was wrong, terribly wrong. And I'm so sorry, but at the time he wasn't willing to. I said, I'm going to report it. He says, I'm not going to say anything. He says, just forget it. I don't want to talk about it. They're embarrassed. It's very embarrassing. Very embarrassing. For kids especially. And for adults too, it's humiliating. And often they're not believed. See, that's a terrible part. And other priests will buoy them up, or the bishop will. Or like that Reverend Monsignor, he wasn't going to do anything about it. Oh, I need more. I need more than a smoking gun. I'd even been with the guy when his lover called and gave this sickening message over the answering machine. I even he had his eyes open like, oh. I said, don't you want to turn that off? I hear it. And he just, no. Because he knew that he had so destroyed me. I was over there talking to him about his issues, in fact. I tried working with him to convince him. You have choices here you could make. And he just went into, oh no, I'm not that way. Oh, you think, oh, his assist. I said, well, your assistant knows, your secretary knows, even your housekeeper knows. I said, people see you with him. And what was in his bag, even. So, yeah, I mean, and, but I think I was pretty much done when he was harassing my son. I'd already tried with him, and my spiritual father said, even he tried to guide. He said, just have him go to a different church, different parish. Don't go there anymore. Stay clear of him. Don't put himself through that. Which was wise, obviously, but my son, it disrupted his life to do that. So that's terrible. That's horrible. Can you imagine how that feels? I'm not going to do anything about the problem, but you have to go someplace else. So I was disappointed in my spiritual father for that. Very much so. So these things are realities, and truths and justice needs to be done. But it's a reality of existence, and it's a very sad situation. Very sad situation. So I'll pray for the women with the little way of truth, beauty, and goodness. I'll pray for the success of their religious order. There were some parts of it, I read some articles on it, and I want to get more clarification. But it's nice when people are going to try to do something about things. And mostly I think you'd probably have to be in position of being a bishop who's going to take a hard line, or people of prayer, powerful prayer. God will get things improved. And there's always removing oneself. So, and that sadly can get down to that, where that's the best answer in some ways, if you're not going to get help to stop someone who's doing wrong. Or really the best thing's just, I realize now, and did shortly after, when I found out that in this other situation they hadn't turned it over to the police. But this new bishop did do that immediately, but the one I was dealing with didn't. And see, if I had it to do over again, I would just go to the police. Forget the people you're supposed to report to. Just go to the police and report it. If you're really serious about getting it cleaned up, let the police get them. And something has to shock. But if that isn't going to work even, or if you do have to have some facts, some proofs, obviously. Can't go around accusing. But other than that, this prayer is powerful, but it's in some situations the police are needed. So you have to weigh all these situations. It's a combination effort to clean up that stuff. But I'm not really called to that. I'm called to the hermit. Of course, I'm called to pray for any corruptions and wrongs, but it's not my vocation. It's not my charism. No. But it's great. That's another facet of the church that's wonderful, to have so many opportunities for people to try things. And you can do you don't have to get approval for, you just pray. If you want to be a hermit, just be a hermit. I don't need any recognition or a law. I like the authentic, original hermit. Just go do it. And if you want to pray for a certain problem in the church, or get a lot of people to pray, do that. You can do that online. Develop a group online and post every other day or something, some prayer attention. We'll all pray for this. And how beautiful is that? That's good. So, but you can also do it the other way and create a religious community, a religious order, and do all the paperwork. And it takes quite a while to get approved, but if you want that, go for it. Grab hold, seize the day, do the opportunity or the way, what you would like to try to build up the world through a religious order, through being a hermit, through being a person of prayer, a writer, a poet, a singer, a daycare worker, or whatever it is, through love, through pure love. It's the best way. Build up and help stop, though, corruption. It's very important. Justice is very important. Love to you all.